Welcome you and all to another episode of the Global Latin Factor podcast where we talk about Latino everything. I am your host, Crispin Valentin. Thank you so much for being here. Before we get started today to this amazing story, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Why? You have nothing to lose and so much to gain and so many amazing stories that we have on the podcast. So subscribe to the Global Latin Factor podcast. You can also check out the website at thegloballatinfactor.com. If you already subscribed, I want to say thank you so much for helping us grow this platform. Thank you so much for being here, sharing the stories, hearing the stories, and I truly appreciate you. Now, today, we're doing a solo episode, but it carries a little bit of exchanging cultures vibes, and you're going to get to know all about it because this dish we're talking about today makes sense when you look into the different world it comes together and brings together through crops, labor, migration, empire, and everything regarding cooking. And now, let's get to the story today. Today, we are talking about rice and beans. Yeah, this one is the biggest staple food in Latino culture, especially across the Caribbean and Latin America. For you, it might just be simple, but trust me, there's more. Not one exact recipe, but the whole entire family of dishes that becomes part of the daily life in places like Puerto Rico, Cuba, República Dominicana, Brazil, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and El Salvador y Honduras. All those amazing places know this particular dish like the back of their hand. Scholars write on regarding Puerto Rico that the Eastern Caribbean treat rice and beans is more than just a basic meal. They treat it as part of the memory, identity, and everyday cultural life. And that is the real story here. Rice and beans are they're not famous because it's just flashy and they're just for festivities. It's famous because it stayed on the table and it stayed in the house. Not only that, but it stayed in the culture, la cultura. Rice and beans became powerful because it stopped being a recipe because it's part of everyday Latino life nowadays. And now let's start with this amazing history and story of rice and beans. Rice and beans did not begin in one original dish and in one simple place. The two ingredients come from different parts of the world, across the world. To be specific, the rice mostly people are known today comes from the Orisa sativa and has the origin of Asia. Common beans are domesticated in the Americas, especially in Mesoamerica and the Andes. So, from the start, the plate is already meeting story of these two amazing foods. Rice comes from one world, and beans come from another world. And Latino culture, those ingredients come together through a bigger history, much bigger history, shaped by the Americas, Africa, European, and the colonizing of the world. That is part of the unusual story that we miss. Sometimes people don't and take it for granted. Now, let's start with the beans. First, beans were already here way before Europe was here, way before colonization. Beans were already part of the indigenous culture, indigenous agriculture systems, and the Americas in general. They were cultivated, eaten, and understood long before Europeans entered the picture by thousands of years before they even got here. Some of the bean sides and So the beans and the beans and rice, belong to the deeper indigenous story of this hemisphere. This is the base layer of this story and is where we're talking about today in regards to Latino cultural honesty and having to say that clearly that a lot of Latino food history is built on indigenous foundations because that's what it originated for in the Americas. Rice enters the story differently. Rice comes in the Americas through colonial systems and its cultivation in the Atlantic world, depending on heavy on the knowledge of labor of enslaved Africans, especially people from the West African area, rice growing region. That's where they usually grow, that particular area. The Smithsonian of National Museum of African American History and Culture points directly to African experience in the rice cultivation and water control system in the Atlantic world. They already had that figured out even before we did. So, when the rice and beans became part of Latino culture, it was already carrying multiple histories at once. Of course, as we mentioned before, the indigenous American agriculture in the beans and Asian origin in the rice. Exchanging cultures happening immediately right there. An example also the global land factor. African agricultural knowledge and labor in the rice growing system in America, and Spaniard and Portuguese colonizing routes that spread the crop and people and food waste across all the regions and different regions in the world at that time. That is why this dish has so much depth, so much depth. It's not only just one cultural dish, it is a historical convergence that becomes deeply in Latino and Caribbean in everyday life. Rice and beans carry indigenous roots, African knowledge, and the history of the Caribbean and in Latin America right into one single plate that we all adore, that we're just thinking about it. Can't wait to have some arroz con frijoles, arroz con angules. Now, here's where the Latinos get even stronger in regards to the rice and beans. And not only that, but it becomes culturally central because somebody declared it was important. Nobody declared it was important. It just became a central thing that people, because it just kept making, they just keep making it. That is what now the food is embedded into a regular type of day. It's like expected now. It's not like, oh, we're going to make some beans and rice. Passed down, cooked without needing any special occasion to be able to have it. In Puerto Rico, rice and beans is not just a trend. In Cuba, it's not just some occasion, some cultural symbol. In Brazil, arroz con feijão is not only an event. In Central America, dishes like gallo pinto and casamiento built into everyday rhythm of life. Like, this is like not even a thought. We already do it as it is because that's just part of life. That kind of repetition matters because more than the hype, one dish becomes part of a weekly routine, part of a family memory, and part of people's defined and complete plate in regards to its food. And it's just stopped being food in general. It's just part of a staple in the household. It becomes part of the culture itself. And that is what happens here. One of the strongest cultural reading comes from work on Puerto Rico, where rice and beans is discussed not only as a staple, as part of culinary imagination, sabor, and belonging. In Eastern Caribbean, scholars describe rice and beans as a necessary omnipotent across regions food itself. Literally, this is what life is like. This is the right scale in regards to the dish. Latino culture, it's just not luxury food, it's not novelty food, it's foundational food. Arroz y frijoles. The power of the rice and the beans are not just in regards to it being rare. The power is that it became normal, and now it's talked about the dish itself, like beans and rice, is just a happening every day. The recipes are just different, and everybody in their family have their own recipe, their own dish of the way that they make rice and beans. Cuba have the moros y cristianos and congri, and Costa Rica and Nicaragua, as I mentioned earlier, has gallo pinto. El Salvador and Honduras have casamiento, and Puerto Rico has arroz con habichuelas as part of the core. I was waiting for a brief. Every plate in Brazil, arroz con feijão, and one of the most recognized daily meals patterns in that country every single day. That is why, again, that doesn't matter the version. That's why people defend their own versions of which one's better, because they're not defending just a random recipe. They are defending the version that raised them as kids, the version from their home, from their island, from their country. So when you attack the recipe, you're attacking their abuelitas, their grandma, their tias, their mom, and literally their table. So they're going to defend it with dear life. And that is one of the reasons this dish stays alive, in because it's flexible to travel, but especially enough that it feels home when you try it. It's a balance and power. It's not only that, but even scholars agree that it's a dish that is just among one of the most interesting, and how it became, again, an exchanging culture thing. The Book of Rice and Beans, a unique dish in 100 plates, makes the point that rice and beans appear in many places, but each place's roots is local in identity and history. So even if it's local, it became their own thing. So yes, it's a global, and it makes sense. But Latino in life is just different in intensity in regards to the way we did it. Beans and rice is one of those dishes that you can literally be global, but still completely local depending on the time. Not only that, but the nutrition side of it, because beans and rice also last for different reasons. It works. It really works. You will hear people say that rice and beans became a complete protein, but that's just a phrase to get used to. It's not the clearest explanation in regards to what happens. So here's what happens. Rice and beans complement each other very well. Beans and rice, of course, beans are rich in protein, fiber, and minerals. And then, of course, rice mainly is starch and energy. Together, they make a more balanced, stable, and rich meal than just rice alone or just beans alone. There's studies actually behind those contributions and that combination specifically. In 2012, a study of the Nutritional Journal found that beans and rice meal reduces the post-meal glycemic response compared to rice alone in an adult with a type 2 diabetes. In 2017, randomized crossover trials in nutrition found that eating black beans and chickpea as a part of rice meal improves glycemic and response compared to others that just eating white rice alone. So when you value rice and beans culturally, historically, and nutritionally, it really is fulfilling, and it is a balance. It's a balanced plate. That's what people just, it's been around for years. It stretches across classes, and it keeps showing up because it works in real life. For thousands of years, it's been doing it, and it continues to do so. Now, let's keep it very accurate in regards to the combination of the grain and legumes. They've been around in other places, but Latino culture, compared to other cultures, a similar thing happens in West Africa, and also, has a stronger rice tradition. South Asia, of course, also has its legumes and lentils, but the broad food logic globally, what stands out amongst Latino cultures is how strongly rice and beans became embedded embedded in everyday identity dish, especially in the Caribbean and Latino America countries. It's like an everyday thing just about. And they don't get tired of it because it's so good. That is the strongest point, not exclusively, not just the embedded part. This is why somebody can leave home for years and still think about that amazing food, still miss the plate and beans and rice, because that dish is just not just an ingredient anymore. It's rhythm, it's memory, it's childhood memory, it's familiar to everybody. And when you have it, it's like tasting home. It really takes you back. If you can picture that, imagine that, that's where it puts you. So if you look at beans and rice straight up, here's what you probably see. You'll see the indigenous culture, you see the agriculture history, and the Americas and the beans. And you also be seeing Asian rice entering the Americas through colonial systems. And you'll be seeing also the role of Africa and labor and agriculture knowledge in the history of rice cultivation in the Atlantic world. Not only that, but you are going to be seeing also in the Caribbeans and culture taking all that and turning it into something that is everyday, familiar, and deeply rooted. And that is why this dish deserves respeto, because not only because it's, amazing to try and it complements, but because it's a foundational food staple every day here right now. The story in the rice and beans, and only that, but again, it's just part of something that we talk about of a global land factor and exchanging culture of thing that came together that is just without thinking about it. We just kind of sort of take it for granted because it just appears in our dishes. But if you think about it as Latinos, whether it be in the Caribbeans, Puerto Rico, La República Dominicana, or South America, you'll have it every day, and it's amazing. And the fact that it combines together how they complement each other in regards to nutrition is amazing. This was another episode of the Global Latin Factor podcast, a little bit of a solo episode and a little bit of an exchanging culture episode, which we will eventually have another one because some of the tanda clip that we put is doing very well. We even got a shirt, by the way. I'm looking at Bree. We even got a shirt now these days. So, again, thank you so much for joining another episode of the Global Latin Factor podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Why? You have nothing to lose and so many amazing stories to gain. We have over 253 episodes for you to indulge, for you to binge if you would like, to be able to catch up and learn something new. And we always appreciate you giving us a comment. I know the last episode of the hip hop and Latinos, but I really going in on the comments. But guess what? I didn't say anything that was not incorrect in regards to taking away hip hop from African Americans. I'm just stating what the scholars are saying. So, I mean, take it up with them. But yeah, y'all see me in the comments. Reach out to me. I'll probably just Google something and paste it for your response so we can keep it engaged. I'm not even lying. That's exactly what I did sometimes. Not out of disrespect, but to give you a response that's what's showing in the scholars. So, big shout out to Tiffany Folklore for joining me on that episode. Very interested. It's doing great numbers. It's just doing magnificent numbers. But I see the passion behind why. Again, hip hop, 4 pillars, not just rap. Take it with a grain of salt, por favor. Don't feel like we're taking anything away from you. And if you have an issue with that, take it upon the music establishment that's taking it away from y'all. Okay, so again, this is another episode. Make sure you subscribe. And remember, we are just like you. We are people. We are the spice and flavor in this melting pot that it is the world. Till next time.